Let me ask you something honest. When you glance at your phone or your fitness tracker at the end of the day and see that you've walked 200 steps, do you feel like you've fallen short? Like you almost made it, but not quite? If the answer is yes, this video is going to change something for you. Not just your step count, the way you think about movement entirely. Because that number, $10,000, the one that has been programmed into virtually every fitness tracker, health app, and wellness recommendation for the last 30 years, was not discovered in a laboratory. It was not established by a clinical trial. It was not the conclusion of a decades-long study tracking thousands of people across multiple countries. It was invented to sell a pedometer. And the moment you understand where it actually came from and what the real science says about how many steps you need, particularly after 60, something genuinely liberating happens. You realize that the goal you have been measuring yourself against every single day was set by a marketing department in 1960s Japan, not by evidence-based medicine. And that the actual research, which is extensive and increasingly precise, tells a story that is both more nuanced and far more encouraging. Let's start at the beginning. The year is 1964. Tokyo is hosting the Olympic Games, the first time the Games had been held in Asia. And Japan is experiencing a surge of national pride, cultural excitement, and a very new public awareness of physical fitness. In this environment, a company called Yamasa-Tokei Keiki, a Japanese clock and instrument manufacturer, introduced one of the world's first consumer pedometers. They needed a name for it. They needed something catchy, something memorable, something that would resonate with a public newly interested in their own health. They chose the name Manpo-kei. In Japanese, man means 10,000, po means steps, and kei means meter. The 10,000 step meter. It was a brilliantly simple piece of marketing. Some historians note that the Japanese character for 10,000, mo, looks a little like a person walking, which gave the name visual symmetry and additional appeal. The product was a success. The number caught on. And then it did something that almost no marketing idea in history has managed to do. It crossed the ocean, circled the globe, embedded itself in public health messaging across dozens of countries, got programmed into fitness trackers made by Apple and Fitbit and Garmin, and became a universally accepted standard for daily movement, without a single clinical trial to support it. Min Lee, an epidemiologist at Harvard Medical School who has spent years researching the actual science of step counts, told Popular Science magazine plainly, there were no actual studies that had looked at 10,000 steps at the time the Yamasa pedometer was developed. It was a made-up number in the sense that 10,000 sounds good and is easy to remember. A made-up number, one that has been the default goal on every fitness tracker you have ever worn. One that may have made you feel countless times like you failed to reach your target, when in reality, you may have been well within the range that research actually supports for meaningful health protection. So what does the research actually say? We now have meta-analyses covering hundreds of thousands of people, tracked over years, using objective accelerometer data, measuring outcomes like all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, cancer incidence, cognitive decline, and physical function. And the picture they paint is consistent, clear, and far more nuanced than any single magic number. Let's start with the finding that will probably surprise you the most. A major meta-analysis published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology in 2023, analyzing data from 12 studies covering over 111,000 people, found that as few as 2,517 steps per day was associated with a statistically significant reduction in all-cause mortality. 2,500 steps. That is roughly a 20-minute slow walk. At that level, the data showed an 8% reduction in overall mortality risk compared to people walking approximately 2,000 steps or fewer. For cardiovascular disease specifically, the optimal level was around 7,126 steps per day, associated with a 51% risk reduction. Read that again. 2,700 steps is where cardiovascular protection begins to register in the data. Now, those are the minimums, the threshold where benefit first appears. The relationship between steps and health outcomes is not flat. It follows what statisticians call a nonlinear dose-response curve, which means benefits increase as steps increase, but at a decreasing rate. The first few thousand steps you add to your day produce the largest returns. Each additional 1,000 steps after that continues to help, but produces a somewhat smaller marginal gain. The same Jack meta-analysis found that the optimal step count for all-cause mortality reduction was approximately 8,163 steps per day, associated with a 60% reduction in mortality risk compared to the lowest activity group. For cardiovascular disease specifically, the optimal level was around 7,126 steps per day, associated with a 51% risk reduction. And here is the detail that directly challenges the 10,000-step doctrine. Volumes above 10,000 steps per day showed a plateau effect, with no significant additional risk reduction beyond that level. More steps above 10,000 did not produce meaningfully better outcomes. So the research is pointing us toward a range, roughly 7,000 to 9,000 steps, as the zone of optimal benefit for most adults, not 10,000. And the benefits start appearing far earlier than most people realize. A 2023 meta-analysis published in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology analyzed 17 studies covering over 226,000 people across Australia, Japan, Norway, Spain, the United Kingdom, and the United States, followed over 7 years. It found that taking as few as 4,000 steps per day was associated with significantly lower risk of all-cause mortality. 4,000 steps. That is approximately 30 to 35 minutes of leisurely walking accumulated over an entire day. And a research team from the University of Sydney, whose findings were published in JAMA journals and received significant attention in the scientific community, found that 9,800 steps per day was the optimal level for dementia risk reduction specifically, associated with a 50% lower risk. But, and this is the number that matters most, risk of dementia was already meaningfully reduced at just 3,800 steps per day, where participants showed a 25% lower risk compared to the most sedentary group. 3,800 steps. That is a short walk in the morning and a short walk in the afternoon, with some incidental movement through the day. Now, what does this mean specifically for you, for adults over 60? And particularly for those managing mobility limitations or chronic conditions that make walking long distances difficult? A meta-analysis of 15 international cohort studies, one of the most comprehensive analyses ever conducted on this question, found a clear age-differentiated pattern. For adults younger than 60, the benefits of increasing steps continued until approximately 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day. For adults 60 and older, the risk reduction curve leveled off earlier at approximately 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day, which means the target that the research actually supports for your age group is meaningfully lower than the 10,000 step standard that was set for no age group in particular. A Lancet Public Health systematic review published in 2025, one of the most recent and rigorous analyses on this topic, concluded that while 10,000 steps per day remains a viable target for highly active adults, 7,000 steps per day is associated with clinically meaningful improvements in health outcomes and may be a more realistic and achievable target for many people. The evidence certainty supporting 7,000 steps is substantial. This is not a consolation prize for not reaching 10,000. It is the evidence-based recommendation. For adults with chronic conditions or mobility limitations, joint pain, heart disease, diabetes, balance difficulties, recovery from injury or surgery, a separate body of research addresses your situation specifically. A comprehensive review published in the International Journal of Behavioral Nutrition and Physical Activity established that for older adults living with disability or chronic illness that limits mobility, a target of approximately 5,500 steps per day represents a meaningful, achievable, and health-protective goal. Some research suggests that even 4,600 steps averaged across a week produces measurable benefits in this population. A comprehensive review published in the International Journal of Behavioral Nutrition and Physical Activity established that for older adults living with disability or chronic illness that limits mobility, a target of approximately 5,500 steps per day represents a meaningful, achievable, and health-protective goal. If you are currently walking 3,000 steps a day, which the research shows is common among older adults with mobility challenges, moving toward 4,500 or 5,000 steps represents a genuine, clinically meaningful improvement. You do not need to triple your step count to reach territory where the research shows protective effects. You need to add a few hundred steps per day, consistently, over time. You do not need to triple your step count to reach territory where the research shows protective effects. You need to add a few hundred steps per day, consistently, over time. And here is something that the 10,000-step framing almost never communicated. You do not need to take those steps all at once. Multiple studies have confirmed that steps accumulated in short bouts throughout the day, 3 10-minute walks rather than one 30-minute walk, produce equivalent health benefits to continuous walking of the same total duration. If walking for 30 minutes continuously is difficult because of joint pain, fatigue, or cardiovascular limitations, walking for 10 minutes 3 times across the day achieves the same outcome. The body doesn't track whether your steps came in one unbroken session or were distributed across your morning, your afternoon, and your evening. A study published in JAMA Network Open tracking over 3,000 American adults found something even more encouraging for people who struggle with daily consistency. Participants who took 8,000 or more steps on just 1 or 2 days per week, not every day, just occasionally, still showed substantially lower all-cause and cardiovascular mortality risk over a 10-year follow-up period compared to those who never reached that threshold. The researchers concluded that for adults who face difficulties exercising regularly, achieving a higher step count even a couple of days per week may have meaningful health benefits. Let that settle in. Even the weekend warrior approach to walking, moving more on your better days, less on your harder days, confers real protection. This is not permission to be permanently sedentary. It is evidence that the all-or-nothing framing around step goals, if you can't hit 10,000 every day you failed, is not supported by the science. There is one more dimension worth understanding: the role of intensity, not just quantity. The same large-scale analyses that established the step count research also found that cadence, how quickly you are stepping, is independently associated with health outcomes even after accounting for total steps. Walking at a pace where you are taking approximately 100 steps per minute, which corresponds to a brisk pace where your breathing deepens but you can still hold a conversation, activates different physiological responses than shuffling the same number of steps across the same distance much more slowly. This doesn't mean every walk needs to be a power walk. It means that when you do walk, walking with some intention and some pace, not strolling, not rushing, but moving with purpose at a rhythm that gets your heart rate modestly elevated, adds a layer of benefit beyond the step count alone. If you are walking with a cane, with a walker, or with balance support, pace is less relevant than consistency and total distance. But for those who can adjust their pace, brisk walking for even a portion of your daily movement adds measurably to the cardiovascular and cognitive protective effects. Now, let's talk about what to do with all of this practically, because information without application is just interesting. And the whole point of this video is that you can start today. If you are currently largely sedentary, fewer than 3,000 steps per day, the research is unambiguous. Any increase is beneficial. Your first goal is not 7,000 or 8,000. Your first goal is 500 more steps than you took yesterday, then 500 more the following week. The dose-response curve for steps is steepest at the low end, which means the largest health returns come from those first few thousand steps you add. You do not need to reach 7,000 immediately for the movement to be doing something. If you are walking 4,000 to 5,000 steps per day currently, you are already in the range where the evidence shows meaningful mortality and cardiovascular protection. Your goal is not to double your current count. It is to gradually edge towards 6,000 to 7,000, the range the meta-analyses for your age group identify as optimal, at a pace that is sustainable and comfortable. If you have mobility limitations that make outdoor walking difficult, stepping in place counts. Marching on the spot in your living room, lifting your knees, swinging your arms, produces comparable step counts and similar cardiovascular stimulation to walking the same number of steps on flat ground. If you have a step counter on your phone or wrist, it will register these steps. If you don't have a step counter, you don't need one. 30 minutes of movement at any intensity that is comfortable for you, accumulated in any configuration across the day, produces measurable benefit. The step count is a proxy for movement. Movement is the actual goal. Walking aids do not reduce the benefit of walking. If you use a cane, a walker, or Nordic walking poles, all of which are used regularly by people in the research studies that generated these numbers, the protective effects of the movement still apply. The goal is to move your body through space consistently, How you support that movement is secondary. Let me also name something that almost never gets mentioned in step count conversations: the specific relationship between daily walking and the brain. We have covered BDNF and neuroplasticity in previous videos, but the step count research adds a different dimension to this picture. The University of Sydney study that found 3,800 steps associated with reduced dementia risk was not measuring exercise intensity or structured workout sessions. It was measuring ordinary daily movement, the walking people did going about their lives. This means that the kind of movement that protects your cognitive health is not confined to deliberate exercise sessions. It includes the walk to get your mail, the steps between your bedroom and your kitchen, the circuit around a grocery store, the stroll through a parking lot. All of it accumulates, all of it counts. So here is where we land. The 10,000 step goal was born in 1964 in Japan from a company that needed a memorable name for a pedometer. It spread around the world not because researchers determined it was the optimal human daily step count, but because it was catchy, it was round, it was easy to remember, and it coincidentally landed on fitness trackers that made it the default target for every person of every age in every health condition. The actual science, from meta-analyses covering hundreds of thousands of people, tracked over years, measuring real health outcomes, tells a different and more useful story. Benefits begin at around 2,500 to 4,000 steps per day. They increase progressively up to approximately 7,000 to 9,000 steps, where the evidence for adults over 60 identifies the optimal range. Beyond 10,000, the returns plateau with no significant additional benefit for most people. 7,000 steps is approximately 55 to 65 minutes of walking, accumulated across a full day. That is not a training goal. That is a life lived with intentional, consistent movement built into its ordinary rhythms. You do not need a gym. You do not need a specific time set aside for exercise, though that helps. You need to move through your world a little more, consistently, patiently, and with the knowledge that every step you take past where you started is contributing to something real. And if today you walked 5,000 steps, know this. The research says you are well inside the zone where meaningful protection begins. You are not falling short. You are doing something that genuinely matters for your heart, your brain, and your independence. How many steps are you currently averaging? Tell me in the comments, and if you have a goal you're working toward, share it. Your consistency is your own, but your story belongs to this community. Reading about someone else's progress is often what makes the next walk happen. Stay moving, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next video.